Hi, welcome to the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio. Following up on my previous entry about Star Trek Discovery, I wanted to bring to your attention a June 23rd blog post on Entertainment Weekly's website entitled Star Trek Discovery to Ditch a Long Frustrating Trek Rule. The iconic TV franchise's biggest creative limitation has been lifted. And I'm going to quote from you here. Star Trek Discovery is shedding a creative restriction that's long frustrated top writers on previous shows in the franchise. Showrunners Aaron Harberts and Gretchen J. Berg, working from a creative roadmap laid out by executive producer Brian Fuller, are delivering a Trek saga that gets rid of one of the franchise's decades-old limitations in an effort to evolve the series. As part of Trek creator Gene Roddenberry's utopian vision of the future, and one that Trek franchise executive producer Rick Berman carried on after Roddenberry's death in 1991, writers on Trek shows were urged to avoid having Starfleet crew members in significant conflict with one another, unless a crew member is, say, possessed by an alien force, or from being shown in any serious negative way. In an aspirational effort to make the future more idyllic, Starfleet crew members typically weren't supposed to demonstrate baser human flaws. For writers on Trek shows, the restriction has been a point of contention, behind-the-scenes contention. One TNG and Voyager writer, Michael Piller, famously dubbed it Roddenberry's box. Now, I just felt that this was incredibly condescending and also really kind of misses the entire point behind Roddenberry's vision. Keep in mind that Gene Roddenberry served aboard United States naval vessels during World War II. When he created Star Trek, he brought his experiences serving in the Navy to the television show and modeled the ranking system aboard the ship and in Starfleet on naval ranks. And the ship-wide discipline structure was modeled on naval discipline structures. And there's a very important reason for this, and that is when you're in space or on a seagoing vessel for weeks, months, years at a time, you cannot simply walk away from someone if you have a problem with that person. You have to deal with him or her and find a way to resolve your issues and work together, because if you can't, people die. And the naval disciplinary structure ensures that any conflict that could compromise the integrity of the mission or jeopardize lives is quickly put down. Now, yes, there is conflict within the original Star Trek between crew members. Spock and McCoy often quarreled because they had contrasting worldviews. Spock represented the logical, rational aspect of human nature, and McCoy represented the emotional, reactional aspect. And these two points of view often clashed, and Captain Kirk often had the unenviable task of mediating between these two disparate personalities. And he had to, because at the end of the day, you simply could not have endless bickering among your senior staff, or really among any members of your crew, because it can compromise the safety of everyone. Now imagine if you were to take Captain Kirk out of the equation, or if Kirk had been any less of a commanding officer and he had let Spock and McCoy continue to argue. Well, when Captain Kirk doesn't enforce military discipline, Spock and McCoy let their arguments get out of hand. When their arguments get out of hand, Uhura starts cussing at Starfleet Command. When Uhura starts cussing at Starfleet Command, Captain Kirk gets demoted and confined to quarters. When Captain Kirk is confined to quarters, Scotty barricades himself in engineering and starts drinking himself into a coma. When Scotty drinks himself into a coma, Sulu pilots the Enterprise into a black hole just to shut Spock and McCoy up. Don't let Sulu pilot the Enterprise into a black hole. Keep basic military discipline. There is a very good reason why the Starship Enterprise was modeled on contemporary naval vessels. If you look at the ship design. It is painted battleship gray. The name and registry number is the same font used on United States naval vessels. And when you look at footage from the unaltered original series, whenever the Enterprise fires its phasers or photon torpedoes, it looks very much like a battleship transplanted from Earth into space. And this was a conscious decision on Roddenberry's part, because when you are sending a crew light years away from home, cut off from your society, from everything you know, from everything that is familiar, when even going on shore leave has a potential to put people's lives in jeopardy because of a misunderstanding or a conflict of interest, you have to rely on each other in order to survive, in order to carry out your assigned mission. So, the idea that you can have a spaceship where interpersonal conflicts pretty much get out of control or are written in a soap opera format, or however CBS executives want to do it, it's just not feasible within Star Trek canon. Quoting again from the article, towards the end it says, "There's also the fact the last Star Trek series, Star Trek Enterprise, went off the air 12 years ago, and the TV drama storytelling has evolved to be more realistic since then, and so has sci-fi." Again, this is just condescending and insulting. I mean, first of all, Roddenberry knows far more about what's realistic than pretty much anyone currently writing. He was a military veteran. He served aboard naval vessels. He modeled the aesthetics and military structure of the crew of the Enterprise on his experiences in the real world. It was realistic to expect that people who served together closely for years at a time, who have come to admire and respect one another and think of each other as a sort of family because they have to, that is realistic. And if you think that a galactic civilization that has existed within the series for well over a century, century and a half, or however long it is at the time Star Trek begins, that they haven't resolved a lot of the potential interpersonal and intercultural conflicts that might arise, I mean, that is unrealistic. So here CBS's writers and producers are not only dissing Gene Roddenberry's vision and, kind of like one of those little head-patting, condescending things like, there's a quaint little idea, now run along and don't interfere. Then it's just horse-pucky, and I sincerely hope that if they go through with this, then Discovery just crashes and burns. Because the CBS has just made so many mistakes, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Les Moonves and the people who put this show together don't understand Star Trek, nor do they care to. They don't care about a franchise that has really been kept alive for over 50 years by a very devoted and dedicated and passionate fan base that has kept interest alive through conventions, through fan films, through buying merchandise for all those years, and you're just going to insult them repeatedly, and on top of that, you're going to put it behind a paywall? I mean, first of all, I don't know what demographic CBS is targeting. If they're trying to target the fans of the J.J. Abrams movies, that is a vastly smaller target audience than the larger Trek audience, which really did not react all that well to Abrams movies, especially, considering Abrams publicly said that he found Star Trek too cerebral for him, and gave the implication that he had to dumb it down to his level. And if you watch the video linked to below in the description, it explains that Abrams wanted to make his version of Star Trek the only version of Star Trek available. He didn't want CBS putting out DVDs. He didn't want them putting out any merchandise. The toy manufacturers refused because they can't even give away the toys from his Star Trek movies. And they can't give away DVDs of his movies. They suck that badly. And so thankfully they had the good sense to say, fuck you, JJ, and we're not going to do it. And CBS, to some of its credit, basically told him something similar. The problem is that CBS was just as bad as J.J. Abrams in their disrespect for Star Trek, and now they're producing something that has the name of Star Trek but isn't Star Trek. I'm sorry, but just putting a Starfleet Delta-shaped badge on the uniform doesn't make it Star Trek. And trying to turn it into a glorified version of the Battlestar Galactica reboot, which is an entirely different beast altogether, it's just not going to work. So I hope that by the time they broadcast the pilot in September, I think the projected date is September 24th, I hope somebody comes to his senses over at CBS, because right now it just seems like this thing is going to crash and burn so badly, because no one's going to want to have to shell out money they don't have to watch something that they used to be able to watch for free on network television, and that really has been, from the beginning, tailored to alienate people. I just don't see it working, and I hope it doesn't work. I hope Paramount and CBS take a lesson from this, is if you're going to do Star Trek, do it right, understand what it is you're making and why. And if you want to make something along the lines of what you're doing, fine, but just don't call it Star Trek, because it's not Star Trek. It doesn't live up to the spirit of it, and it certainly doesn't live up to the letter of it. So anyway, this is just my opinion. If you agree, great. If not, that's fine. Everyone is entitled to his or her opinion. If you want to donate and help me get a better microphone, better webcam, you can visit my Patreon page, linked to below in the description. And if you don't want to go through Patreon, I do have a PayPal account, and you can send money through the email that's also listed in the description. So anyway, take care, have a good day, I'm out.